And so here we go. Here we are for day 2 of AutoCAD Level 1. It's really, the class is called AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT Level 1 Introduction. It's a 2-day version of a 4-day class that we have. So we've talked about the interface of AutoCAD, understanding the interface, the application menu, the quick access toolbar, the ribbon. I think probably we're interfacing mostly or more frequently with the ribbon than the other aspects of the interface. We use the status bar to enable ortho mode or polar tracking or object snap. The drawing window is where the door and the window in our residential file lived. And then we talked about accessing help with AutoCAD. Help is hosted 100% online, and you do need to have an internet access or an internet connection to access your help. Then we opened up a drawing file. It's not the one we see here. I usually have that one uploaded. It was just 1/3 of that drawing. It's the right side, the master bedroom, if you will. Bedroom manual, I believe the drawing is called. In that drawing, we issued some display commands, pan and zoom with the mouse wheel, and then we created and saved that first drawing called residential. And sometimes I say put on your company acronym or your personal initials, sort of separate it out from any other file. We opened up the application menu and double-checked the drawing units of the residential drawing to find them to be architectural, so we can express ourselves in feet and inches, and set the drawing limits to be 50 feet in the horizontal, 50 feet in the vertical, which is a little large for a drawing of the size that we were working on, but it's fine to have the limits a little large. Better to be larger than smaller. And we created, I want to say it was like a half dozen, 7 layers in that drawing from the layer panel, the layer property manager, and we'll be moving through those layers as we progress through class today. We probably set the A wall layer as the current layer, and then use our basic draw commands, line, circle, and arc, to just sort of doodle and get a feel for how these commands work. And I think, Matthew, you had indicated that there's a similarity to Photoshop that makes it a pretty straightforward process for you. And I do find that, yeah, that's great. I find that that's really common. I don't write software. I wouldn't know the first thing about writing software, but there's got to be just a really small window of ways to do things in software. So I think that's a real good thing. I had a young lady in class last week for our 4-day version of the class, and she was a Vectorworks user. And early on in the class, she said, "Oh God, I hate AutoCAD." And you hear that a lot. If someone's coming from a different piece of software into an office where they're more or less forced to use AutoCAD, you'll often hear them say, "Oh God, I hate AutoCAD." But by the end of our 4th day, she was like, "You know what? I don't hate it," which I'm okay with. I'll take it. I don't hate it. She didn't say she loved it, but knowing the background that she now knows, she's like, okay, it's not the devil. So we used our line, circle, and arc command, and then used the line command with ortho mode to create the window drawing and direct distance entry, pointing in our desired direction, typing in a distance like 2.5, pointing right, typing 36, and so forth, and it created that. A very simple window drawing. And I know, Matthew, a lot of the work that, I believe a lot of the work that you'll be doing is more civil in nature than architectural, but this is a drawing that we can use over and over again if you're someone who's doing a floor plan. And I don't know a ton about civil drawings, but there'll be similar things. Like I would think of like a man gate, a vehicle gate, culverts, things like that would recur in a drawing. Those would be good drawings to create and insert into future drawings. We did a similar exercise creating the door drawing using polar tracking instead of ortho, I should say. Set the polar tracking incremental angle to 45 degrees and created this door using the line command, absolute Cartesian coordinate 0, 0, and polar tracking and direct distance entry. Found a 45-degree angle, typed in 30, hit enter. Found a 315-degree angle, typed in 1.75 and hit enter. Found a 225-degree angle, typed in 30 and hit enter. And then finally, it was second to last angle was 135 degrees to sort of close up the rectangle. And then I asked you to add one additional line a 0 degree or a very horizontal line that was 30 inches in length that allowed us to snap the arc to the door to simulate the path the nose of that door takes upon swinging open. Called that drawing door, and that'll come into play later this morning or early this afternoon. Finally, we talked about our basic modify commands: erase, move, copy, extend, and trim. Move and copy were really similar, where we would select an object, select the command move, instantly move the crosshairs into the drawing window so you can see the command prompting at your dynamic input, and then follow those prompts. And as something of a review, I have not, where's that drawing? Right there. A lot of times between sessions, between day 1 and day 2 and day 3, I'll restart my AutoCAD. AutoCAD runs best when it's initially open. The longer it's open, the less efficient it is with the memory, at least on the computers I've used. That may not be the case for every installation of AutoCAD, but as you can see, I have not. I still have my modify commands, door, window, residential, and bedroom manual drawings all still open. And just as a refresher, one of the commands we talked about was the erase command, and I'll just select a few objects in my drawing, and once I have my desired number of objects selected, I'll hit the erase button on the modify panel, and those objects go away. That was one of our modify commands. The second one was the move command, and in this case I'm going to select 4 objects, 3 circles and 1 line, and with those 4 objects selected, I'll click the move button, move, and here's a pretty good example of what I try to do whenever I start a command. I move my crosshairs into the drawing window as soon as I can, and the command prompt says specify base point. So where do I want to pick this up by? I'm going to pick this group of objects up by the center of the middle circle, left click. I now have it, and I can move to a new destination and left click and place that object or those objects where I want to when I'm done. So the command prompting, the command prompts are vague. They're not the way we would talk to each other, but they are, once you get used to sort of the shorthand that AutoCAD uses to walk you through commands, it'll become easier. So if I left click my 3 circles again, left click my horizontal line, and instead of hitting move, this time I hit copy, go ahead and left click copy, move the crosshairs into the command window, or the drawing window, excuse me, and the command prompt says specify base point again. So I'll left click the center of this middle circle, left click, and then I am to move and left click destinations for these objects. AutoCAD refers to that as a second point. So where do I want to take these things? So I'm just sort of, I'm not using a ton of accuracy, I'm just sort of moving and popping these things around. And when I'm done with my copy process, I'll hit escape, and that cancels or ends that command. So those were the commands that we used early on or experimented with, well, later in the day actually, yesterday. So finally, 2 more commands that I'll just review quickly, and feel free to ask questions as I'm plugging along. Just kind of a good warm up, get my voice warmed up. So I'm going to start with the extend command. I have some line work in the extend trim area. That line work has been trimmed back to the point where it's now a sort of a rectangle. So I'm going to open up where trim is. I don't want to trim right now. I want to extend. So I'll use the drop down or the disclosure button next to the trim button, and I'll find extend. Left click extend, and then I'll just move my, now it's not a crosshair, now it's a pick box. A little square is called a pick box. And I'm going to hit enter. Hitting enter tells AutoCAD that I've just selected every object in this drawing as a boundary, as a destination. So if I hover over a line, and if it's pointing at some other object, some potential boundary, I'll get a preview. If I like the preview, I'll left click, hover, left click, hover, left click. So I'm just hovering over these lines and left clicking to confirm the preview. 3 of these lines extend very easily out to their the natural boundary that is these lines that surround the extend trim area. This line here, when I extend it up to the text, it will stop short of the text because there is a sort of an invisible boundary around the text. This is called multi-line text. I'll hover over that line and left click again, now it's extended to the other side of the top boundary. That one more click would get me all the way to that top boundary. So I've extended to these boundaries inside the extend trim area. Now I'll hit escape to cancel. However, I should mention some commands you don't have to do that. Some commands you can just start another command. With the, I want to say from memory, the distance command we used yesterday to measure the window drawing, if I click distance, I do one click, two click to measure the distance between these two vertical lines. I'm not really in the command. I'm sort of in the command, but now if I try to start another command, sometimes there it goes. I had to click it twice to get that command to restart. So sometimes, just to make your life easier, hit escape to cancel the command you're in, and you can start the next command with some more relative ease. So I'll go ahead and click extend, move the crosshairs into the drawing window. The command prompt is to specify, or excuse me, select. Actually, I want to use extend. I use extend. Pardon me. Let me open up where extend is. Click trim. Move the crosshairs, the pick box, into the drawing window. Select objects. The objects AutoCAD wants me to select are cutting edges this time. So if I right click or hit enter, I'm telling AutoCAD everything in this drawing is a cutting edge, and then I can again cut these lines back to the point where they are. I have that little rectangle again. All right, so like so, and I can trim my circles off of lines as long as the line passes through more or less both sides of your circle or totally bisects the circle. If a circle does not, or if a line does not, I don't think I have. Here we go. If I left click on this circle, I can't trim this because that line doesn't reach all the way through it. If I extend that line, then I can trim it. And what I'm doing here is holding the shift key, and the prompt at my crosshairs tells me I can hold the shift key to turn my trim into extend. So I'll hold the shift key, left click that vertical line, and I'm extending. Then I can come back and trim these circles if I need to. And when I'm done with trimming, I'll hit escape. Okay, so those are the 5 basic modify commands we covered yesterday afternoon. And the final thing we covered in the afternoon was the methods of selection. There was a number of them. One was a single left click that I referred to as top pick. Top pick just means if you have multiple objects stacked on top of each other, when you left click, you're selecting the top object, not the objects below. I'll hit erase. Then there was the selection window. The selection window was created by forming a window or a box with the crosshairs from left to right, and every entity entirely enclosed in that box becomes selected once you make your second left click. So it's 1 left click, 2 left click. Anything outside of that selection window remains unselected. 1 left click, 2 left click. Now the reverse of that is the crossing window. If I start right of my objects, left click my mouse, and move towards the left, now I'm creating the crossing window, and the crossing window captures anything it touches or totally encloses. So those are some of the big ones. One of my favorite ones was the select similar, and that's why I had so many circles in my drawing. Left click one object, right click, from the right click menu, select similar. That captures objects of a similar type, in this case circles, on the same layer, in this case layer 0. So the 3 circles that are on the shelf layer, or whatever this yellow layer is, are unselected. They are left out of the selection. So it's going to be handy. I don't have a good drawing that I can show you, but one of the drawings that like the 4-day version of the drawing, we've got something like 18 windows, and you can left click one window, right click your mouse, and select similar. You'll capture all 18, and then you can count them in your properties palette, or you can change their properties or what have you. So those are the main methods of selection. I don't think, if I come back into our book from yesterday, the only select all was one, Control A to select all objects, and selection preview was not really a method of selection. It's more of an accessory to selection, where if I hover over an object, I think it's most obvious if we're looking at text. You can see those objects will preview. They'll react to the presence of the crosshairs. So that's kind of a review of what we covered yesterday. Questions on anything, repeats on anything, or clarification on anything? Okay, awesome. Okay, awesome. You guys are easy. All right, all classes should go like this. So let's move forward. Gonna bring up the PowerPoint again. I put the PowerPoint in the materials area of the GoTo training interface, and feel free to download that and edit it how you need to. It's a live PowerPoint. I'm going to flip the page. Day 2, part 1. We start pressing into some new commands, right? We're looking at our advanced draw command, polyline and rectangle, and then we'll, following on advanced draw commands, we need some advanced modify commands to go with those. So we'll get into some advanced modify commands, and then we'll get into an exercise. Hopefully, you have the master bedroom drawing printed out. I don't know if there was a PDF on that. If I look at in the materials area, residential instructions for creating class, I don't see it there. Scale factor cheat sheet. You may not have that. So why don't I do this right now? I'm going to upload a PDF of this floor plan drawing, and it'll cut my screen off for a second as I do this. I'm going to go ahead and click Manage Materials, and I'm in the Manage Materials area here. I'll add material from computer. Okay, there we go. I have uploaded that file. It now lives whereabouts. I think these things are sorted alphabetically. I can see window at the bottom, residential, instructions, getting ready, get class, door, CAD, bedroom manual, OLE viewport. Yeah, Daron says that. Let me say it again. Is it okay to put to look at the PDF on the computer screen? Totally. Yeah, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. What I'll probably do is I'll split my screen when we get to the point where when we're doing the floor plan exercise. I'll split my screen so you can see sort of the complete version versus the the in progress version. So let's talk about. Let me get this out of the way. I'll get my webcam out of the way there, and let's go to. I'm going to go back to the modify commands drawing. Well, let me go to the book first. In the book, we'll flip the page to page 30 and 31, and we've got a couple advanced draw commands that we'll talk about. The first of which is Polyline, and Polyline really the workflow, a term that I hear around AutoCAD workflow, is sort of the starting the command and the process of moving through the command. The workflow of Polyline is really similar to the line command. So with line command, if I start line, the command prompt at my dynamic input at my crosshair says specify first point. I'm going to escape out of that, and this time I'll start the Polyline command. Left click Polyline, and the command prompt at my crosshairs dynamic input says specify start point. So it's one word different, but the meaning is sort of the same. I'll turn on ortho, and then I'll left click a start point. I'll just left click somewhere, left click, that's my start point, and I'm going to mimic the path I took going around that window. So I've started at some location. The command prompt is kind of obscured right now because I have ortho on. The command prompt is obscured, but on my command line, the prompt is P-line specify next point. It wants me to specify the next point. So as I'm pointing up screen, I'm going to type 2.5 and I'll press enter, and that creates a little 2.5 inch long line. Then I'll pull to the right with my polyline. I'll type in 36 and I'll press enter. Then I'll pull down the screen, and then I'll type in 5, enter, and left on the screen, 36, enter, and then I'm going to come up and I'm going to type in 2.5, enter, and then finally the last section is 36. I'll go right, 36, enter, and if I like this, I'll hit escape. So that's the the window that I created, we created yesterday. It's a little bit different because if I go to the window drawing file, I click on that top line, it's an individual line, middle line's individual, bottom line's individual. If I hit escape and go back to modify commands, this is one continuous object. So the Polyline command creates a continuous linear object. You can just doodle with it. You don't have to be as sort of locked down as I was here. The desk that I'm sitting at is 60 in the horizontal, 30 in the vertical. I'll go line, left click my start point, and just to go the same way, I'll go up the screen first, 30, enter, right, 60, oops, that's 3, 60, enter, down the screen, coming to the end of that line, down the screen, 30, enter, and I'll close that. I'll use the close option on the command line. Pardon me. That's my Outlook telling me my password expires. So Terrence, you said, I see the PowerPoint, not the AutoCAD. So I didn't upload, I uploaded a PDF. The drawing file is a PDF, so you might see a PDF instead of an AutoCAD file. The files from top to bottom go AutoCAD LT, level 1 instruction. That's the PowerPoint according to the preview there. And then we've got AutoCAD class file. That's a zip file. And then the third one is student workbook. That's the workbook I keep flipping back and forth, and that's this workbook here. And then moving down a little further, scale factor cheat sheet. That's the cheat sheet that we'll be using later today. It's PDF format. Let me confirm that. It is PDF format. And then bedroom manual, OLE viewport, also PDF viewport. Can I open that? Will it let me open that? That's going to want me to download it. I'm not going to download it. I'm not sure I understand that. So this is right. I thought you were showing what you were doing in the software. Could you not see my screen? You could not see my screen. You could not see my screen, right? That's what you were saying. That I do that. There you go. Right, I got you. So here's why that is. I'm going to show you. I always forget this. I've done I don't know how many. Let me get to my drawing. I've done a number of classes online, but apparently not enough to keep me from making the same mistake whenever I upload files. So I just uploaded that PDF. And when I upload drawings, it freezes my screen, and I forget that. So because it doesn't look different. So all I've done here, let me erase this. I'm going to erase this, and I'll come back. And I'll just recreate this. I'm going to use the yeah. Thanks, Terrence. There's just in AutoCAD, there's these things where I feel like there should be a little bit more overt. Alert to the user, hey, this is happening, and they're there. And I think the same thing with GoTo training. I love me some GoTo training. I think it's good software, or it's a good application, but it should be like, hey, you're talking and no one can see you, whatever you're. Anyways, moving on. I'll repeat that. I'll click Polyline, and I'm gonna just, like I said, I'll recreate that window that I drew earlier. Left click my start point, pointing up the screen, and then I'm typing in my distance, 2.5, enter. Right on the screen, 36, enter. Down the screen, 5, enter. Left on the screen, 36, enter. Up the screen, 2.5, enter. And then right one last time, 36, enter. And when I'm done, I'll hit escape to cancel. And what that's created is really, this is a continuous linear loop that sort of crosses itself like once or twice, but well, once, I guess, nearly so. And I also created the desk I'm sitting at. That's this here. I'll go Polyline, left click a start point. Let me move down the screen some. Left click a start point, and I'll go up the screen, 30, enter. Right, 60, enter. Down the screen, 30, enter. And then I'll close that. I can right click and close. And that's created a truly closed shape in AutoCAD. That shape cannot be opened up without some accessory command like break or trim or what have you. So the Polyline, it is really no different than the line command but or at least the workflow is no different than a line command, but the resulting shape is different. If I did the same thing, if I created that same shape with line, I'll go line, up the screen, 30, enter, right on the screen, 60, enter, down the screen, 30, enter, and I'll right click and close. You know, if I click on the lines, you can see each line is a separate entity, and it would take really nothing to open up this shape. It says it's closed, but I can open it just by grip editing, you know, one portion. So the act of creating a polyline, or the process of creating a polyline, isn't different than the process of creating lines. The resulting object is different, and that's kind of the difference there. So I know when I have people who are space planners, people who are monitoring the spaces of their offices, they'll polyline the plans. Like here's the bedroom manual. I'll go polyline, and I'll just left click. I'm on a different layer. I'll left click with my object snap the four corners of that space, and once I get to the fourth corner, I'll right click and click close, or I could type C and hit enter, or I could have clicked close on the command line. This now is a singular object. It sits on the perimeter of this space, this room. I can quantify the area very easily. I can attach this polyline to a database for facilities purposes and so forth. So your polyline is usually it's desirable for what you can do with it after you've placed it. For me, when I mentioned that I had done fire alarm design work, or fire alarm drafting work is the honest truth. If I click polyline and I'll left click and I'll move away from my first point, say this is the first point that my polyline attaches to, could be my fire alarm control panel, and then I'll left click and turn into, let's say, a hallway. I'll go up the hallway and down the hallway, and all the while I'm drawing my polyline through the fire alarm strobes or the fire alarm speakers, or the devices that alert people to exit the building, there's a fire. I would use a polyline to draw the circuit line, or the circuit wire, if you will, because I would have to provide to the fire marshal a voltage drop calculation, which was a product of taking the length of your circuit and the number of devices on that circuit, and it would create, this is how much voltage is being pulled in from the circuit. If I click on the polyline and I go to the properties panel, I'm going to pin this open. Properties panel is from the right, it's base, clipboard, utilities, group, properties are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panels from the right, and all I'm doing is I'm just expanding the drop down, pinning that that panel open so you can see the process here. I'll left click the polyline and I'll left click the command list on the properties panel, and then that's the result. Really from here up to there, that's all the information that AutoCAD knows or can tell me about that polyline. And it's really more information than I want. I really just wanted, whoops, and sometimes that thing will go away by itself. Can I bring that back? I'll just click list again. That's not going to work. I'll hit F2. F2 is a shortcut to bring up your expanded command window. F2 is what I just pressed there. And here's what I wanted. I wanted not the square footage, because I can't really trust the square footage. If I could move that dialog box, this thing is open-ended, so it really can't give me a truly accurate square footage. But it gives me a length. Here's the length of my polyline. It's 62 feet, 8 1/4 inches, let's say, or something like that. So it's 8 and the precision is really high in this drawing. So let's call it 62 feet, 8 inches. So the polyline, I think, is valued for what it can give you after you've placed it. It can give you information like square footage, length. If I had to copy this object, I can make one selection. It captures all 3 sides. I'm not having to make 3 clicks or make a big window, that kind of thing. So it usually is just a desirable object to support AutoCAD design. But really, the difference between line and polyline are not truly revealed until after you've placed it, or why is it called an advanced draw command is you have some command line options. If I click polyline, No command line options until after I left click, and start. Now that I've left clicked, I can switch into an arc. I can create an arc with my polyline. I can change the width of the polyline and so forth. So that the command line options are what would really qualify this as an advanced draw command. I'll move to the right, left click my next point, then I'll come down on the command line, click arc. Now I'm creating an arc shape. It's ortho's on, so it's being very sort of rigid with how I create this arc shape. It actually keeps you in arc mode, and these arcs will switch back and forth and as you're drawing them. Then I'll go ahead and left click line on the command line, and I'm just drawing linear portions of this polyline. And now I'll come down and I'll click width on the command line. It's going to ask me to specify a starting width, say 2 inches, enter. Then this is what do you want for your ending width? Well, if I don't want a conical shape or like an arrowhead shape, I'll use the same ending width, 2, and enter. And then there's this very bold polyline. And then I'll come down and I'll click close. So there's a couple of the command line options that I use to create this, nonsense shape, whatever it is. But that's kind of what qualifies Polyline to be referred to as an advanced draw command, because it does have these command line options. Now you should be aware, once you change the width of your polyline, that polyline, all future polylines will stay with a changed width until you change it back. So if I go polyline, left click, I'm drawing again this 2-inch thick polyline. I'll click width on the command line and I'll make the new width 0. 0 is the defaulting width. Enter. For starting and for ending, I'll do 0, enter, and now I've gotten back to, oops, I think I ended the command. Let's see if there we go. So even though I ended the command, I did change my width back to 0. The idea behind that 0 width, which sounds nonsensical, like if it's 0 inches wide, how can I see it? Well, 0 is just, it allows you to zoom up on this all day long, and it will never change its thickness in your viewport on your drawing window. So someone who draws football stadiums can use the same tool, Polyline, as someone who draws microchips. It's as functional. It's not bound by scale. If you change the width of your polyline, that width it's a truly defined width. It can change the visual effects of your screen as you zoom in. Okay. So that's Polyline. Questions at all on Polyline? I'm going to do a little erasure in the meantime just to do some cleanup. Okay, awesome. So our other advanced draw command, I'm going to pull the pin on the properties panel and get that to fold back up. Rectangle is our next advanced draw command. So rectangle is in the upper, let me set some of these things back to the way they go so my screen looks more like yours. So that's kind of the default display mode. I've just set circle and arc back to the default display modes. Rectangle is a draw tool in the upper right corner or in the upper right corner of your draw panel. I've only had one coffee so far. So if I left click rectangle, this command is actually very easy to use. It's like 2 clicks, 3 if you count the one that starts the command. So I'll left click the command. The command is started. The command prompt at my crosshairs, I've moved into the drawing window, specify first corner point. So if I left click, that first left click is the first corner point. Move away from that first corner point, left click, that's your rectangle. So it's really just 2 left clicks, and the movement is sort of diagonal. The first corner is created, and then you move diagonally away. It doesn't have to be down, it could be up, it could be whatever, but just sort of diagonally. If you just sort of go to the right, it'll create a very thin rectangle. And at this scale, or this zoom factor, I can't tell it's a rectangle. Rectangle, left click, left click. This is not a continuous command by default. Rectangle, left click, left click. I've just got 2 rectangles here now. Rectangle, left click, left click. So try that, experiment with that. You'll notice I'm hovering, accidentally hovering over the rectangle I created, AutoCAD doesn't, the tooltip is not rectangle, the tooltip is polyline. So rectangle is a command that creates a rectangular polyline, an already closed polyline. And if you were to click on it, you'd see all four sides highlight like the polyline we drew earlier. All right, questions on rectangle at all? That's just sort of the doodle, just kind of doodling. I hope that is a nationally used term, doodle. One moment, let me glass up here. So it really is. So Terrence says, is it just a different way to get the same result if using normal lines? It really is. Here's something about rectangle. If you're creating a rectangular shape like the desk I drew earlier, I've already erased it, but if I want that desk, I'm going to left-click rectangle, I'll left-click my first point, and then on the command line, or actually on my dynamic input, I'm going to see if I can highlight this. This is hard because it's happening as I use it. I'm going to try and put my information in that box right there. So I'll go rectangle, rectangle, I'll left click a start point, and then those two numbers that I moved into the highlighted box, those represent the potential coordinate for my upper right corner. I've already anchored the lower left corner, but the two windows there in that highlighted box are the X value and the Y value. And in AutoCAD, just like in the alphabet, X comes first, Y comes second. So if I want this desk, I'm going to draw a desk, air quotes. If I want this to be 60 wide, my X is going to be 60. So I'll type 60, and then I'll press the Tab key. This is like filling out a form online. I press Tab, it closes the X window, opens the Y window. Now I'll type in 30, and I'll press Enter. And that created this very specific sized rectangle. And so I could have done that with lines. I could have done that with lines, but it was maybe faster using rectangle. I mean, I was talking the whole time. You'll see in AutoCAD there's a number of tools that can be used interchangeably. They're completely different names. Maybe they have different intentions, but you can use them to reach the same end. And that's a common process with your AutoCAD user. One thing about a rectangle is I'm going to use the rectangle to start this floor plan. I'm going to minimize some of this stuff. I'm going to turn off the dimensions, and I'll get rid of. There's a little artifact right there. I'll erase it. I'll get rid of my polyline. So this is the floor plan. It's a very basic, very skeletal, or in some parts of the country they'll say skeletal. Maybe that's the UK, but this is a very bare bones floor plan. But if you squint at it, it's a rectangle, right? It's a rectangle with some holes knocked in it, and there's some duplications and so forth. So because of the desire to draw things like this, people will use the polyline command. I'll open up or back to modify commands, and I'm going to create that rectangle. I'll go rectangle, left click the first corner, and then in the XY window of dynamic input I'll type in 16 feet 6, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but I typed in 16'6". I don't need to put the hyphen between the feet and the inches. I don't need to put the inch mark. AutoCAD will assume inches. So my horizontal is 16 feet 6. Tab closes the horizontal or the X window, opens the vertical or the Y window, 31 feet 7. Enter. So that arguably I could have drawn that more quickly with lines. Maybe not. It would have taken me 1, 2, 3, 4 steps versus 2 steps or whatever. But one of the upcoming commands is a command called offset. We're going to use offset to create the illusion of a 2 by 4 thick, a 2 by 4 wall, or a 3.5 inch thick wall, and and so forth. So what happens when I use offset on a polyline? I'll go offset 3.5, enter, left click the polyline, move inside, and left click. It offset all 4 sides because that was a polyline. So yes, it's a different way to draw the same thing I could draw with lines, but if that were 4 lines, I'd have to do 4 offsets. And then I wouldn't have the neat corners that I have here. Here I've got nice neat corners, where if I had gone line, left click, 16 feet 6, enter, up the screen, 31 feet 7, enter, left on the screen, 16 feet 6, enter, C, enter to close. Now I'll go offset. I'm going to accept the offset distance of 3.5. I'll hit enter. I'll go left click. All right, so I did one face. Now I'm going to do the other face, or a section, or portion, whatever you want to call it, segment of the rectangle. So it took me 4 clicks, and now I've got to clean up the corners with my trim command. So there's just, if I know I'm going to create a complex shape, I might use Polyline command to get there. There's really no wrong way to use this software. I mean, there'll be people who will tell you that. And I've worked with a number of people like, oh, the way you're doing it's not good. It's wrong how you're doing that. And I'm putting, this is going to be a video on YouTube. I might see some comments like, hey, that's not how you should do this or whatever. I mean, there's too many ways to use the software. If the 3 of us are part of a design team, if we get together, we put our heads together and say, hey, this is how we're gonna do things. That's not wrong. That's how we're gonna work. Anyways, that's the rectangle command. You can use it just sort of in a doodle sense, just sort of sketching. I could have done this with, I used a polyline, I think, earlier to put the polyline in that bedroom area. I can go rectangle, left click one corner, left click the opposite corner, and that's the same result. I've got that rectangle there, or polyline, right? Because rectangle is actually not a shape in AutoCAD. It's not an object, it's a command. Polyline is the object it creates. All right, so one more time, let me delete this stuff and I'll recreate it just as a refresher. When we get into this floor plan exercise we're going to be working on, we'll start rectangle, left click. In our example, we'll start it at the 0, 0 location, but in this example, I'll just left click to start it. I'll go left click, move away from that corner, and I don't have to move terribly far, but now I'll type in my X, 16 feet 6, tab, 31 feet 7, enter. Or if I erase that, rectangle, left click, 16 feet 6, instead of tab, I'll use the comma. Come back into my drawing window, a little too far. 16 feet 6, because I was off screen there, let me start over. Rectangle, left click the first corner, got it, 16 feet 6, comma, this time instead of tab. The result is the same, 31 feet 7, enter. And that's the result. And one of the cool things about dynamic input, this is sort of a sidebar, an accessory to, but if I click on that polyline and hover, not over the edge grips, but hover over the corner grips, I can get a temporary readout of the horizontal and the vertical, dimensions of that. They're hard to see probably on screen, but it's showing me 16 feet 6 in the horizontal, 31 feet 7 in the vertical. If I repeat that with this smaller rectangle or polyline, hover, it's 39. I wish I could zoom in on this. I can't zoom in on it though. But it is 3 feet 2 and 1/67, 2/56 of an inch in the vertical. It's 3 feet 2 and 29. No, excuse me, 93, 2/56 of an inch. This is kind of always bugged me about this drawing, this modify commands drawing. This is a really basic drawing that I sort of pulled together from a different drawing just to have a common practice area for anyone attending class or online or in our classroom or otherwise. The precision of this drawing is ridiculously high. It has no business being this high for what I'm using it for. So if I go back to my application menu, come down to drawing utilities, and I click on units, or I could just type the word units. I get into this dialog box here, and here the original author of this drawing, who was not me, cranked up. Oh, look at that! They cranked up the precision as high as it would go. I'm going to crank it down to 1/16. I'll lean in to see that. Also, the author of this drawing has also changed the insertion scale to be feet. For architectural, that's not right. That should be inches. But there could be a reason why the author did that. So I'm just going to change the precision. I'll leave the insertion scale as it is, and I'll hit OK. And it's even telling me that. Look at this. For use with architectural or engineering linear units, insert units should be set to inches. I'm getting a little back up here. AutoCAD says I'm right. I'll say OK. I'm not going to change it because maybe I can show you later on, what the result can be if we have these different insertion scales. Now, why did I do that? Why did I change my precision? So when I hover over these grips, oh, that one doesn't count. That one's on the nose. If I click on this polyline and hover over that, so now it's 3 feet 2 3/8 of an inch, or where are you? 3 feet 2 5/8. Those are pretty close for something I just eyeballed. Yeah, it's off by 2/8. Anyways, you get the idea. Polyline or rectangle, those are advanced draw commands that can sort of give you some good results after the fact. Okay, questions on those advanced draw commands? Okay, so I feel the need to, I want to show you one more advanced draw command. It's not in the class. And Matt, you may use this. Terrence, you might use it. I'm not sure. Like I said, I've said it over and over again. I don't know a ton about civil drawings. I don't know a ton about sprinkler drawings. But I could see, and I've seen some civil drawings. I'm going to expand the draw panel. And there's these two tools in the expanded draw panel. You expand it, and there's these two tools. One is called Spline Fit, and the other one's called Spline CV. These both create an object called a spline. My education really began at age 28 when I started taking AutoCAD training. I'd never heard the word spline before, so I assumed it was a native AutoCAD term. It's not. If you're in engineering, you may have heard it. I think spline is a term that was coined in the early 60s or the mid 60s by a mathematician who was trying to find a way to describe or measure a linear curve or something along those lines. Spline can be used for a number of things. One of the things I've seen it used for mostly in civil drawings would be like ponds, fire ponds, retention ponds, whatever. So I'm just going to show you how this tool works, and then I'll move on. So I'm going to click Spline Fit, left click. Spline, specify first point. I'll left click right here. I'll move. Now it says specify next point. I have ortho on. I'm going to turn ortho off just so I'm a little freer. So I'll just sort of move down, left click. I'll move up and left click down. I'm just going to alternate ups and downs, and then I'll backtrack. I'll head back the way I came. And I'm surprised it's just taking a while. So my video card is not, I'm not maximizing the use of my video card. I'm going to close this. I'll go C, enter, and I've closed my spline. So this is a spline that was created with fit points. That's what these grips are. These are fit points. And this kind of allows you to create sort of an amorphous, sort of a organic shape, if you will, versus your rectangle. This I have seen in some civil drawings, like I said, used for, I would say, ponds or something like that. But there's other topo. It could be like topo or whatever. So that's, again, not hard to create this. I don't know that I have total control over this. Draw, I use Spline Fit. I'll use Spline CV, left click. CV is an abbreviation for Control Vertice or Control Vertex. So this one, you can see it a little better as I'm drawing it. I'm just moving and clicking, moving and left clicking, and then I'll close again. I'll right click and close, and that's the result there. So this is a tool that it would be a little tedious to try to do that with Polyline to create that shape right there. So that's another advanced draw command. Let me get rid of these. And most classes I don't cover that. Occasionally someone will ask, hey, is there a way to create a shape like this or whatever, and the answer might be spline. So those are the, also in the book, it's in the book here, I'll show this to you. In the book on page 30 is Polygon. The Polygon tool is an advanced draw command that if I didn't show it to you, it would be kind of a cheat. So I'll show you the Polygon tool. Polygon is, the workflow is not like Rectangle. With trim and extend, these two tools are together and they're in the same flyout because their workflow is so similar. Later on you'll see fillet and chamfer are very similar commands. They're lumped together. Well, Rectangle and Polygon, their workflow is not similar, but they do create already closed polylines, right? So I'll go Polygon, the command prompt, once I, again, habitually moving my crosshairs into the drawing window, enter number of sides 4. I want 8. 8, not 58, 8. There we go, 8. Enter. Specify center point of polygon. Say I left click right here, I'll left click the midpoint of my rectangle. Left click. Then it says to inscribe in a circle or circumscribe about a circle. I'm going to go circumscribe, left click, and then it wants to know what's the radius of this circle. So I'm going to do like 8 feet 3. I'm just kind of throwing that number out there and I'll hit enter. And that's the result right there. That's the polygon. I used 8 feet 3 because the top edge of the rectangle was 16 feet 6. So 16 feet 6 divided by 2 is 8 feet 3. So I just wanted to show you that, you know, when you're using that circumscribe method, the long angle of your polygon will come to rest on the outer portion of your radius value. If I polygon again, number of sides, I'll hit enter for 8, same center point. What method or what option I'll use inscribe, and I'll use the same radius, 8 feet 3, enter. So the 8'3" polygon is a little bit smaller because it's measuring, I'll use my distance tool from the center of the polygon to the corner is measuring that 8 feet 3. The circumscribe is measuring from the center of the polygon to the long angle. So they're slightly different. And the tooltip, actually this is one of your more informative tooltips, kind of shows you the difference. On the left hand side is an inscribe polygon, on the right hand side is a circumscribe polygon. So it's not a hard command, it's just following the prompts. There's what? First, we start the command. Second, enter number of sides. Third, define a center point or specify, left click somewhere for a center point. And then choose your option. You either want to measure from the center to the pointy part, center to the vertex, or you want to measure from the center to the long angle. Long angle is vertex. Long angle is circumscribe. The vertex or the corner is inscribe. So that's but at the end of the day, if I hover over this thing, polyline, not a polygon, it's a polygonal polyline. It's a multi-sided polyline. Okay, so those are your advanced draw commands. Let's move on. Unless there's any questions at all. I have way too many applications open. Back to the book, right there. So departing page 30, 31, we'll go to page 32, 33, and these are the advanced modify commands. And I won't go through these all at one time. I think it's kind of painful to the student. Like so far, what time is it? We've been going about 55 minutes so far this morning. Maybe a couple minutes more than that because I didn't start the video, start recording right away. But it's been command. Well, we'll do a couple commands and then we'll get into, how about this? We'll do a couple commands, we'll take a break, and then we'll come in, we'll knock out this floor plan exercise on page 33. So we don't need all of the commands on page 32 to do the floor plan on page 33. You just need a couple of them. And if I were to zoom in somewhat on this page, again, this page is pretty representative of all the pages of the book where it's mostly graphic. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to quantify, you know, how much graphic there is versus text, but you've got a snapshot of the ribbon that shows these commands, and it actually shown, this is how my resolution used to show my command buttons. If I go back to my AutoCAD, here you can see move, copy, stretch, rotate, mirror, scale, trim, fillet, array, all have labels in my interface, but I have a decent monitor and I have better resolution now than I or whomever created this graphic back a few years ago. So same tools, just no labels. Move, copy, stretch, rotate, mirror, scale, trim, fillet, array, erase, explode, offset. So these commands in the little gray rectangles are grouped by workflow. The workflows for the first floor are similar to each other. The workflows for the second two are similar to each other, and then the workflows for these last two are close. They're not that similar, but so that's kind of how this book is laid out. If you're looking at it later on, no one's ever asked me. I always just feel compelled to sort of spell it out. We'll start off with the offset command first. You know, the order of events in our floor plan drawing will look something like this. We'll create a polyline with the rectangle tool. Then we'll use the offset command to create the wall thickness. So if I go back into my drawing here, modify commands, got into the wrong drawing. I'm going to just erase this line work. I don't want to erase that much. Erase this line work. And let's say I want to create I'm recreating this floor plan, the outer face of your exterior wall. I'll start the rectangle tool, open up where Polygon is, click rectangle, left click the first corner, and then I'll type in my X comma Y, or X tab Y. So my X is 16 feet 6 comma 31 feet 7, enter. There's the outer face. I'll left click. So that's not a modify command, that's a draw command, right? So now that I've used my draw command to create the start point for my floor plan, the dimensions that I have turned off here, turn them back on with the little on tool. The initial dimensions are outside dimensions. This 16.6 is the outside face. This 31.7 is the outside face of the floor plan. I'm going to use an offset command. All my walls in this example, this is it's a practice drawing. It's not a real drawing, or not a real plan. I'll use offset, and I'm going to offset in 2019 AutoCAD. Offset looks like two C's, one C inside another C. In earlier versions of AutoCAD, the offset command looks more like almost like a mitten. If I can get my there we go, a mitten giving you the thumbs up, like a kind of it's a little bit different, but really what it is, it's in both cases it's concentric curves. It's one curve inside another curve. I'll click offset. The offset distance I want to use is already typed in there. I used it earlier. It says 3.5 inches. I'll hit enter. I don't have to type it. I can just hit enter. So offset wants you to specify an offset distance, left click an object to offset. It says select object to offset, or left click object, and then move in your desired direction. If I move inside the rectangle, I get a preview to the inside. If I move outside, I get a preview outside. The preview is a solid, unbroken rectangle. The original rectangle is a dotted rectangle. So they're visually separated. Right, so I'll move inside because my dimensions were exterior dimensions. I'll move inside and left click. And this is a continuous command. For whatever reason, this command keeps on going. So I'll zoom in and I'll left click this vertical line, move right and left click the same vertical line, move left and left click. And I'm just using that 3.5 inch offset. Left click this rectangle, move in and left click the same rectangle or square, and move out and left click. When I want to change my offset distance, there's more than one way to do it, but probably the easiest way will be to restart the command. I'll restart offset, and I'll type in 12, press enter, and I'll left click this horizontal line, left click that horizontal line, that horizontal line, that vertical line. Those are all offset by 12. Restart offset, 36, enter, left click, left click. All right, so I'm left clicking these lines and then moving in my desired direction. Left click this line, move right and left click. So I've just, offset, I've sort of created parallel lines. I don't think the word concentric can apply to a rectangle, but these do have the same geometric center point and so forth, as do these two rectangles here. So offset, the tooltip tells us that offset creates concentric circles, parallel lines, parallel curves. All right, give that a try if you haven't already. If you want to give that a try, just start the command offset, move your crosshairs into your drawing window, type an offset distance, 6, enter, and that's a 6-inch offset right there. I'll do a couple of these. When I'm done, I'll hit escape. Okay. Offset. Hopefully that's not too tough. It's kind of like copy, but a little bit different, right? Because if I copy this rectangle, the next rectangle will be the exact same size, but it's sort of like duplicate object at a distance. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions on that. Cool. Okay. All right. So offset is a command that we'll use to create line work like we have here. I created a rectangle. You use offset to create an additional rectangle that gives the illusion, or we hope it gives the illusion that you're looking down on a stud wall, 4 sides of a stud wall. And we'll also use offset to create cutting edges. In the bedroom manual drawing, if I zoom in at the top of this plan, I have 2 window openings at the top of the plan and a mirror image at the bottom, these 2 openings. These openings are 3 feet wide and set in from the exterior line 1'6". These dimensions go from outside to the left edge, so 1'6" and 3 feet. Right edge, 1'6" and 3 feet. So I should be able to use offset to create cutting edges to use the trim command to open these windows, or to make these window openings. But when I use the offset command, I get more rectangles, right? Just as an example, I'll go offset, 1'6", enter. I'll left click this vertical line, move right and left click, and that line, if you recall from our trim exercise yesterday, that I can't trim with this. There's no cutting edge, there's no touching of lines. So the next command I'll use is the explode command. It's very intuitively located above offset. That's probably by accident, but the explode command looks like a box sort of coming apart at the seams. Almost looks like 2 rectangles sort of like this, and then they're coming apart. Probably because you can explode blocks, and that could be a block. I'm not sure what the symbology is there, but so I'm going to left click. I'll left click both of these rectangles, and then I'll click explode. Left click. So for its name, it's a very undramatic, if that's a word, command. You don't see anything. There's no smoke. There's no fire. But on the command line, the command prompt says explode 2 found. So there was 2 things here. They've been exploded. What does that mean? They've been simplified. This rectangle is now 4 lines, and the outer rectangle is now 4 lines. So these two rectangles are now 8 lines, and I can now begin to manipulate them independent of each other. And I'll do that. I'll go offset, that distance we saw earlier, 1 foot 6, enter. I could have just hit enter to accept it. I'll left click the outermost left vertical line. Left click, move right, left click. There's my first cutting edge. And I have a cutting edge that sets in 1 foot 6 on the right side. So I'm going to left click the right side, move left and left click, and there's the right side. So I've offset these 2 lines, 1 foot 6, sort of towards the center of this floor plan. Then we saw that the windows were 3 feet wide, so my next offset distance is 3 feet. So I'll go offset, didn't quite start it, offset, there we go. So move the crosshairs into the drawing window, 3 feet, enter. I'll left click the new line I made, left click, move right, left click. Come over and left click the other line, left click, move left, left click. So there's the result there. I've got 4 new lines that were created using the offset command, but I had to use the explode command first. So these commands sometimes will go hand in hand if you're using polylines. I wanted to use a polyline or a rectangle to create the outer face of the floor plan, so when I use the offset command, all 4 sides came in at the same time, and I didn't have to trim the corners up to make things neat. Then, to review a command we used earlier, we'll use the trim command to make the window openings. So on the modify panel, I'll click trim, trim, then I'll press enter. Enter tells AutoCAD everything's a cutting edge. I'll begin to select the lines. I'm using the horizontal lines first. That makes the window opening. Once the window openings are created, now I can take out the cutting edges. I'll left click like so. It doesn't matter what order you do this in. I just have a habit of going top to bottom, left to right. But now that leaves behind, if I zoom in, little end caps on the walls that our windows can be snapped into. All right, so that was explode. There's explode right there. There's a rectangle or a polyline in the explode area and a block reference, or most AutoCAD users would just say block. I can left click the rectangle, left click explode, and it just simplified this rectangle. Now it's 4 lines. With the block reference or block, if I left click this and click explode, it changes the color of that block. Usually your blocks are drawn on layer 0. They're often inserted onto a different layer, like in this case it was on the door layer before. So when you explode a block, it reverts back to the layer it was created on. So at least there's a visual reaction, or a trackable visual reaction with exploding blocks. Now I can sort of manipulate this line work. I wouldn't say I'm doing it any justice, but I can make changes to that line work where I can't make changes easily to this line work. I need to explode first. So explode, you're typically going to explode something in advance of making a change. You're going to change that object somehow. Okay. The cutting edges were from, yeah. So Terrence says the cutting edges were from explode, right? Yeah, I would say you could absolutely say that, right? Prior to exploding the rectangle, I could only offset additional rectangles. So when it's exploded the polyline, I was able to offset individual sides to make those cutting edges. So that usually offset is used in advance. I'm going to break this thing up, this complex object, in this case a rectangle. I'm going to break it up, and then I can manipulate individual sides, which is what we did there. So yeah, I think it was explode was pretty crucial in that series of commands. Okay, other questions so far? Cool. Let's go, we'll do 2 more commands, we'll take a break. One of the commands we won't really use right away, you might use it, but it's called fillet, and fillet allows you to round corners, what does it say? Rounds and fillets the edges of objects. So say I want to round off the bottom right corner of this square. I'll click fillet, and I'll left click the vertical line, and then left click the horizontal line, and even before I click you see a preview. Left click and the command is over. In our drawing, residential drawing, the fillet command is not ready to do that. If I click fillet, I'll left click the top horizontal, left click the right vertical. The command worked, but there's a radius value that was built in this drawing. If I click fillet again, I'll go fillet. On the command line it says current settings mode equals trim, so it will trim the corner off. Radius equals 1 foot. So if I could measure that arc, it's got a 1 foot radius. If I click radius, I can say 2 feet and hit enter. Now left click the vertical line, left click the horizontal, and it increases the radius of the curved corner. So you're going to use fillet to sort of soften edges, you're going to round corners. It's not a continuous command like offset and line. If I want to offset more, I'll go offset, left click, you know, I can restart the command, or I can go, I think I said offset, sorry, I can click fillet, left click, but I'll click multiple this time, multiple. Now I can left click this corner, left click that corner with fillet, and it's the command's still going because I said I wanted multiple. And there we have it. I've filleted all 4 sides of that. Sorry, I had to pull the plug on the refrigerator. I was just screaming in my ear. Hopefully you couldn't hear it on mic. So again, fillet is one of these commands we're going to use to refine a primitive shape. Not many more shapes primitive than the square, right? So I refined the square to a circle using fillet. I rounded those corners. In this drawing, fillet had a built-in radius of 1 foot. I clicked radius and I typed in 2 feet. But in most drawings, the fillet radius is set to 0, and it needs to be set to more than that. Questions on fillet? What's that on? So wait a second. What did you not get, Matthew? Is it offset or? Oh, you can't. Okay, sorry. Thanks. Okay, cool. That's good. That's a positive. It was a negative statement, not on this end, but a positive. Yeah, because it was the fridge. Thank you. You guys are simpatico. It's awesome. Yeah, it's an old fridge, and it kind of, you know how like the compressor will it'll scream, and that's what I'm hearing, and I worry that you're hearing it too. But I'm glad you're not. That's that's fine. So if I'm not sure, I guess you probably can see this, Terrence, but he's saying sorry, multitasking. You wouldn't know it for the way I bip around. I'm more of a unitasker, but that's so funny. So cool, good. That's good news. Just I'm in an office. My office is about 100 square feet, so it's 10 by 10, which I can draw, you know, with a rectangle. I'll go rectangle, left click first corner, 10 feet, comma, 10 feet, enter. And then I've got a rectangle that's, you know, how big is it? You know, I keep trying to start rectangle. So like right there is my fridge. It's a little like dorm fridge, and my desk is about here, roughly. So it's an older fridge, and so it makes noise, and that's kind of why I pulled the plug on it. So the people here at CAD Micro, they bring, I don't have a cooler here in my office, but those soft-sided coolers that you have with zippers, you put the coal pack in, the whole thing, they bring them to work, and then they stick them in the fridge in our break room. I'm like, these things are coolers. They keep themselves cold. Why you? Then you can't put anything in the fridge because everyone's got their cooler in there. So I brought my own fridge. But the only thing is, it screams at me. Anyways, fillet rounds corners. I actually turned a square into a circle, and that's the result there. let's do one more command and then we'll take a break. It sounds like I might need one. Fillet, we don't really even use fillet that early on, if at all, in class. Sometimes I go whole weeks without people using the fillet command in class. But chamfer is the command that sits on top of fillet, and these commands are so similar, it just makes sense to show you fillet. So we'll use the chamfer command in, there's 2 closets, 3 if you want to count the water closet in this basic floor plan. So the large closet has a chamfered corner that would, in I guess interior design terms, this would facilitate easy flow of traffic. We just use it to say, hey, here's how you chamfer. So the chamfer distances here are 2 feet in the vertical, 2 feet in the horizontal. The chamfer command wouldn't say vertical or horizontal. It would say chamfer dist 1 or distance 1, chamfer dist 2. So I'm going to go back to modify commands, and I'll open up where fillet is. I'll click chamfer. Then on the command line, it says current chamfer dist 1 equals ½ inch. Dist 2 equals ½ inch. So this is really, I'll use it, but you won't see it. I'll left click the vertical, left click the horizontal, and it's so small you can't quite see it. If I zoom in, it becomes more evident. So now I'm going to restart chamfer because it's not a continuous command. I'll restart chamfer. I'll click distance on the command line, distance, and I'll type 2 feet for the first chamfer distance, enter. And after I do that, it thinks I want 2 feet for the second chamfer distance. Well, I do, so I'll just hit enter, enter. Left click the vertical, left click the horizontal, and you get a preview before it even happens, but that's the result there. I've sort of trimmed off that corner, and the corner's been replaced with an angle. So you want, give that a try. Chamfer, click distance, type 2 feet, hit enter, and hit enter for the second 2 feet, and then it will give you your chamfer. I'll do another one. I'll do one up top. So it does retain that chamfer distance. Once you've plugged in a chamfer distance, that chamfer distance stays in the command until you change it. So I can chamfer things, chamfer, whatever. Lines or polylines really is the max. Now I've probably chamfered this particular line to a point where I can't chamfer anymore. It's the distance is too large. Chamfer. There's that one. That one worked, but I didn't leave enough vertical or horizontal line there to repeat that. I could do the bottom right corner, like so. So I'm just kind of doodling chamfer, chamfer. Oops, missed it. There we go. Okay. So questions on, what was that? Offset, explode, fillet, chamfer, those 4 modify commands. Questions at all? Cool. Okay. So let's do this. Let's take a break. Let's call it 10:25. So not quite 10:25, but we'll take a 20-minute. Yes, do a 20-minute break this morning. Stretch your legs. We'll start back at 10:45, and we'll get into the drawing exercise. We'll do a brief review and get into the drawing exercise. So I'll start the timer. I'll throw on an extra 2 minutes there, or whatever, and we'll come back at 10:45 East Coast. Let's go set custom time 22. Say OK, and go ahead and enjoy your break, and I'll see you in 22 minutes, and I'll stop the video. Let me bring this up.